Lots and lots of people believe that the sciences, these sciences that we love, that we reverence, emerged out of a terrible struggle against religion. From the beginning, religion was there in its obscurantism, in its darkness, fighting the powers of light, and the early scientists had to struggle against religion. Who is brought up constantly in this regard but Galileo, who is the patron saint of this view, right? Saint Galileo that struggled mightily against evil religion. If you go to Rome, in the lovely Campo dei Fiori, it's one of these beautiful public spaces, there's a statue of Giordano Bruno. You know that name? He was a Dominican friar, and he was burned at the stake in the year 1600 at that spot. And Bruno had kind of gone off into sort of pantheistic speculation, and the church at that time condemned him, and they burned him at the stake. And there's this brooding statue of him with his Dominican hood pulled up over his head, and he's a martyr to rationalism and to reason. Well, Bruno and Galileo are always trotted out as the great martyrs, you know. I think that story is ridiculous. I think that story has very little justification. It's largely, by the way, an invention of the 19th century, the war of science and religion. Here's what I think is much closer to it. The sciences do not emerge over and against religion, but in fact have a deeply religious presupposition. Peter Hodgson is an English scientist and theologian. He said, two conditions were required for the emergence of the sciences. And they're both theological. The first one is a deep conviction that the world is not God. If the world is God, and lots of people think so, I mean, from ancient animism to the present day, like Star Wars stuff, you know, may the Force be with you. What's the Force but the zoom of energy that runs through all things? The world is divine. Watch the movie Avatar, by the way, if you have any doubts about how prevalent this view is. A kind of natural pantheism, right? Well, see, if you believe that, you're not going to become a scientist. Why? Well, you have to worship nature. You can't experiment on it. You can't analyze it. You can't break it down. You've got to worship it. So the first step is to de-divinize nature. Second step, I've already hinted at this with Ratzinger, the second presupposition is you've got to believe that nature is intelligible, that it's marked by form. It can be known by a seeking mind. Those are both theological presuppositions because they're grounded in creation. If you say this universe was created by God from nothing, you're saying it's not God. Good. The world is not God. So go experiment. Go analyze. Go look at it. You're also saying if it's created by God, that it's marked in every detail by mind. It's not dumbly there, it's intelligently there. Hodgson's conclusion is it's only in the West that the sciences emerged, not as an accident, but precisely because they came up out of this Christian matrix, out of this Christian thought world that made them possible. Here's something else now. I mentioned Galileo. Now, the Galileo story, as you know, is a complicated one. It's never simply a story of good guy Galileo, bad guy church. But I can't go into all the details. But I want to remind people that even if you give it the worst possible spin, Galileo is one paragraph in one chapter of a very long book. Galileo is not the whole story of religion and science. In point of fact, many of the religious leaders at the time of the emergence of the sciences were deeply religious. They were deeply interested, rather, in the sciences. And many of the scientists in the early days were deeply religious. I'll give you a few examples. Pascal, Descartes, Newton, Copernicus, Tycho Brahe were all profoundly religious people. They didn't construe their work as some terrible struggle against religion. Come up a little further in history, you've got Gregor Mendel, right, the founder of modern genetics, who plays a very important role in the development of evolutionary theory. Mendel, of course, is a friar. come up into even more contemporary history, who's the formulator of the Big Bang theory that almost all cosmologists accept? A man named Georges Lemaitre. Father Georges Lemaitre. Did you know that? I put it up on one of my YouTube forums, and I found a picture of Lemaitre with his big Roman collar on, standing at a blackboard with all these equations. Another picture of Lemaitre with Einstein. I wonder how many people know that the formulator of the Big Bang theory was a Catholic priest. In other words, the view that we stand somehow in some dreadful opposition to science is just a lie. And we should have to come forward continually and I think make arguments against that.